Well, welcome back, or welcome to Mental Training Thursdays with the PHP crew. Good to be here with you all. Today's topic is paying attention to your attention, really introducing, there's so much that can distract us during this time, this challenging time. How do we come back to what really matters, kind of our inner compass? And before we get into that, we do have a question just to kick it off, our discussion from last week's topic, maintaining our drive by preparing for challenge.
So the question we had from last week, for my WHOOP goal setting, my wish is to be more motivated in my training and schoolwork, but my biggest obstacle is that I can't get rid of distracting thoughts and emotions. I try to block them out or focus on other things, but I just end up feeling more distracted and defeated. Any suggestions?
Awesome. Well, thank you, Chris. And thank you to that student athlete for sending in that question. I think it's a really important one right now. So we have this wish, we want to stay motivated, which has kind of been our topic these past few weeks, but there can be so many things that are distracting, that have changed in our environment, our routine. And this student athlete really pointed at a particular area of kind of performance training where what do we do with those thoughts and emotions that aren't serving us in the moment, with our training, with our schoolwork. And one of the things that I feel like I'm just going to ask the viewers to try out, and this is an experiment that I tend to do with student athletes, is to see if we can actually control our thoughts just for a few moments. So I'm going to challenge everyone kind of on the call, or if you're viewing this off our website, just for the next 10 seconds, try not to think of Ralphie the buffalo, our mascot. So whatever you do in the next 10 seconds, do not think of Ralphie, starting now. And that's time. So if there are some of you out there that were able to put your focus on something else, we want to have you on our show. Please show up because you have some magical abilities. For those of you that saw Ralphie right away in your mind and you didn't need 10 seconds, you're with me too. And so I think this is one of the things that's kind of paradoxical about thoughts and emotions. They show up, and when we try to cut them out, they almost have more control of us. And we can, anytime we fight a thought or a difficult emotion, it tends to persist. And so one of the things that we really wanted to get at today, what happens when those distracting thoughts and emotions show up? How can we allow space for it? And again, really come back to our internal compass of what matters most.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's a great question that the student athlete asked. And for those of you, if you're kind of having this moment of like, what is WHOOP? Just remembering that is something that, you're having a wish that you have and you have a particular outcome in your mind, but there's likely going to be some kind of obstacle that can come up. So it's really helpful to have a plan. And so I think, if you work through that WHOOP step as well and think about, that one of the obstacles that might come up is that there are inevitably going to be these thoughts or emotions that pop up, then you can make a plan for them too, and addressing how to engage with them so that they're not taking over the script that you're trying to write for yourself. So great question there. So, today we wanted to switch it up a little bit. I know in the past that we've provided, a lot of guided imagery and visualization and kind of these internal focused prompts for skills and strategies. But today we wanted to work off of something that we posted both in the Mental Lift Monday as well as on our Instagram, which is this acronym of STOP. And so before I went into that, I wanted to share a little bit about this idea of what can happen when you're driving. And hopefully this does not happen to folks because safe driving is important. So do not use your phones when you're driving. But let's say that you happen to be doing that and you're on your phone and you're not paying attention, and all of a sudden you look up and you're like, oh my God. And you stop your car real quick because you didn't realize that there was a stop sign right in front of you because you were distracted. Well, that is something that is something we can all fall prey to, right? If we're not paying attention, we can miss this really obvious sign that's trying to tell us something very important. And sometimes when we miss that sign, it can result in some really problematic issues, like you don't want to hit a pedestrian if they were crossing that side street and you miss the stop sign. You obviously don't want to hit another car because there are problems there. So these signs are there for a reason, right? They're there to help us out. And so the STOP acronym is another way that you can like utilize some signs and do some check-in and then be able to address if something needs to be addressed in that moment, rather than, oh, I just rolled through that sign and now I have a $1,000 car bill that I have to fix because I T-boned someone. So just as a reminder, and this is something you can see again on our Instagram as well as on the Mental Lift Monday handout from this week, STOP is an acronym in which the first step is actually stopping and taking a breath and kind of gathering yourself. The second step is taking a step back and looking at your thoughts and noticing that they are just that, they're thoughts. And then being able to observe them without judgment, because that's a lot of what can happen. So kind of what that student athlete had mentioned in their question, they were having a lot of reactions and judgments to the thoughts and feelings that were there. And what can be really helpful is removing that piece and just observing what's present. So the last part of the STOP sign acronym is to pursue your purpose. So today we wanted to give you a skills and a strategy for how you can really hone in on what that purpose is for you so that you can really get a clear sense of that, maybe even help embed that into your WHOOP plan. So I'm going to share my screen to show you a particular worksheet, if you will, that I've used before just as a guide to help me kind of realign and reassess what are my values right now, what are the things that give me purpose, and those are ultimately a guide and a compass that I can use for the things that I'm doing right now and the things that I'm attending to in service to those values, or are they maybe out of alignment? And then that's a cue for me to kind of reevaluate and redefine like how I'm pursuing those things that are meaningful to me. So let's see, there's my screen share. Always a fun moment to try and find that on your screen. And I just gotta find the right document. So everyone should be able to see this compass right now on my screen. So again, we love a good metaphor. Compass is a great metaphor. It helps you find your direction. It doesn't tell you where you're going necessarily, but it can help guide you north, northeast, northwest. And if you're trying to head southwest and you look down and you're like, oh, I'm heading in the complete opposite direction, again, that's a good cue for you. So as you can see, there are a couple of different options here. There can certainly be more, but these are typically main focus areas of values that people hold. So it might be about the relationships they have with their family. It could be the relationship they have with their partner. It could be with their community. So especially for us in athletics, that community can be with your teammates, your coaches, your athletic department. You know, some people, their value can fall with spirituality, and that can be a really meaningful guide for them. Then you've got friends and social considerations and relationships, your career, your employment. For a lot of you out there, that might be your employment, so to speak, as a student at CU. That is your main job, most likely, as well as your job as a student athlete. And so these are things that you can think about. Like for you, there might be particular areas on this compass that are pretty high ordered right now. And the thing to remember about values is that they can change over time. So for example, when Bob and I were in grad school, and Chris too, because Chris was in grad school as well, when all of us were in grad school, at that point in our life, you know, the thing that would have been really highly valued was this education piece of our value system. Whereas things like maybe we didn't have as much time for recreation, even though it was something we valued, it wasn't rising to the top of that high order value system. So this can fluctuate over time, which is why it's really important to do some check-ins with yourself over time and see if the values that you're using to guide your purpose are still the same, or if there have been some changes or adjustments that need to be made. But what you can do is you can use this sheet as a way to literally write down what are some of your values, how do they relate to you in your life. You can use some of these prompt questions like, what is the kind of relationship you want with your family? Or what kind of work that you're engaging in your classes is valuable to you and why? The better sense you have on those value points, the clearer your compass is going to be. And then you're going to be able to check in with yourself and use that as a sign for, am I on track to be engaging in something that's purposeful and meaningful for me? And because this whole week is about attention, when you are really helping hone in your attention towards the things that matter to you, motivation is definitely going to be easier to come by. So I'm going to stop my screen share on that point.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mac, for taking us through that values compass. And maybe to continue the driving metaphor, if we know, we're on the right path, so our GPS is aligned with that inner compass, there are certain maybe road signs. I'm wondering, Mac, if you had any suggestions around, how can student athletes, staff, all of us, when are we noticing we're aligned with our values? Maybe what are some of those emotional, even behavioral indicators, road signs that we're on that path?
I love that you're continuing with the driving metaphor, because I think about, the caution signs that you see on the road. So not just stop signs, but usually there's a warning sign. So the one that I'm thinking of is like a slow down because there's a curve ahead. And obviously if you don't slow down and you try and rip around that curve, things are going to go flying in your car. Obviously there could be more problems around, can your car handle that turn at that speed? So oftentimes I think people can tune into, if they notice that they're really fatigued, if they notice that they are not engaged with something, that can be something they can view as perhaps like one of those yellow slow down warning signs. There might be a curve ahead. And it doesn't mean that you stop immediately and abandon the road that you're on. It just might mean that you need to slow down and take a moment to assess and reevaluate, hey, like, am I going the right speed right now to take this turn? Because I know it's coming up. So, I just named like 2 examples. I think it can vary from person to person. And I know that one of the things that we often talk about is trying to develop this internal awareness. That's why a lot of the skills and strategies that we're using are to help build that internal awareness for each individual person, so that they have a good sense of, how does this play out for me? So for example, like I know for myself, if I am feeling like overwhelmed from the moment I'm waking up, then something is off. And it might mean that one of my values is out of alignment. So my routine and physical activity is something that I really value. And that is something that I have to be aware of. And so if I'm feeling myself being out of alignment or out of attunement with the things that I need and value, I'm going to see it show up in other areas in my life. I might see it show up in how I'm responding to situations that normally don't produce that response.
Love it. Appreciate it, Mac. And, I think one thing that we just want to encourage folks just the week ahead, pay attention to those warning signs. Pay attention to, did I blow through a stop sign? First off, what can bring me back to that internal compass? And what do I need when a warning sign is showing up, or even like, my fuel light is on and blinking. And so we encourage you to come back next week. Please send us your questions from this week. You can email me. That's at robert.deal@colorado.edu with any questions you have. Thanks for joining us. And just so you know, next week, we're going to talk about radical self-care, which is pretty much in line with how we pay attention to these warning signs. So we'll segue into that. We just want to end with a quote today from Jon Kabat-Zinn, one of my favorites, and it goes like this: wherever you go, there you are. So wherever you go this week, hoping that you land, you know, and noticing that internal compass and what works best for you and serves you, and go Buffs.